Well, good evening and welcome to this live stream on Christmas night. It's Martin North here from Digital Finance Analytics. It's great to have you on, and thanks for taking a chunk of your holiday evening out and spending it with us. It's greatly appreciated. We're going to have some interesting conversations today. We've got some questions, some of which came in beforehand, which we're going to build around the show. But obviously, if you've got questions, we can also accommodate those too. Just before we get into Edwin, let me just remind you, I always do, we're not providing specific property or financial legal advice. It's the general conversation. We are moderating the chat as normal. This is as at Christmas night, 25th of December 23, if you're watching in replay. If you'd like to ask a question, use @Walk the World. That'll make sure it goes into my queue and gets to my attention. There's always plenty going on in the chat, so I don't always follow everything. But if you use @Walk the World, there's a greater chance. Also enable Super Chat, which means you can get your questions up the list or indeed make a contribution to what we do here. Anyway, that's enough from me. Let me push this button and bring Edwin in. Edwin, hello. Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too, Martin. How are you going out? How are you keeping there in the in the world of the knights and fairy tales?
Well, it's interesting. You know, having spent many years in Australia with Christmas in the middle of the summer, I always had a nagging feeling that it wasn't right, because normally it should be cold and dark at Christmas time. So I'm back here now, and of course it's cold and dark, although not as cold as normal. But you know, I confess, Edwin, I did transplant a hat onto your head when I made this thumbnail, so I hope you didn't mind. But I thought it was quite fun to really call this a Christmas cracker.
Yeah. Look, I mean, yeah, it was one of those years, wasn't it? It was a cracker of a year, and it's going to be, I don't know what it's going to be in 2024. It's going to be very interesting, to say the least. But yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed that these numbers come on market a lot quicker than what they did in 2023. But I don't know. I've got this eerie feeling there's a lot going to be happening, globally. And like I said, the turtle's turning into a clam, so it's not going to be fun and games for the buyers. But vendors are, look, it's going to be party. But we're also going to be talking about apartments and the differences in pricing and appetite for apartments and freestanding homes have certainly been accentuated over the 2023. I think that's even going to get a lot. There's going to be a lot more happening there. I'm one to believe that. One of my predictions for 2024 is as we get past the middle of 2024, we're actually going to see large numbers of apartment pricing dropping. In many parts of Sydney. Why? Because it's supply and demand. Supply is going to be coming on thick and fast, and there's going to be a lot of startups as well. So, like we said earlier this year, we said that builders weren't going to be building until the government starts opening up their wallets and handing out money to them to build. As they said, well, why should we build with our money when we know that the government's going to be giving out handouts for builders to build? And that's that's going to be the trend. The builders are going to be building the high-rise developments that are going to be full of holes and full of issues down the track, which is the unfortunate thing. But this is what we've been monitoring, the WeChat chatterers. What they've been saying is watch this space and be very careful. Not to get conned into buying into the many high-rise development projects that are going to be starting up in 2024. They still don't have an appetite for apartments. Some of the mainstream media have been, the last couple of days have been talking about the falls in property prices. Where in Sydney have property prices fallen? And when you start really reading into it and looking into it, you start dissecting it and pulling everything apart. You realise it's in your very densely populated areas with where investors came in the droves, 3, 4, 5 years ago, buying off the plan apartments and before. And where the WeChat chatterers basically said pull out, and even if it means that you take a hit, pull out, realise your money, and start looking for freestanding homes. So it's really going to be a race, and in 2024 to get that gem, which is going to be your freestanding homes. I can see them going up in price for way into 2024, particularly if the numbers of the listings on market continue to drop and demand continues to increase.
Absolutely. And just on a couple of things that you said, there's more reports of building company collapses, right? This happens to be the latest here. And my surveys suggest that we're going to see more in the way of building construction companies collapse over the next little while. I've had a number of conversations with people who have committed to home and land packages, and then the building company has basically fallen. And they're stuck, right? Because you've got a half-finished construction project underway. You've got a contract that's perhaps no longer any value. You've got possibly some insurance. But of course, the next building contractor that might be interested is going to put the price up dramatically. And I've seen quite a few people with this horrible dilemma. Do I sell this sort of half-finished thing, whatever the value of the land is, plus not much more? Or do I try and find somebody else to complete it? And, Home Builder created this. This is a government-created problem that is still resonating as the construction industry continues to waver. And, you made the other point, of course, that they're waiting for governments to bail them out, aren't they? We've already seen some of that in and around Brisbane. We've seen it in other places too. So what that basically means is that it's going to be more taxpayer money, directly or indirectly, that's going to go into support the building and construction sector. And then, of course, they want to bring more building and construction operators in under the migration scheme as well. It's a bit crazy, really.
Look, it is, Martin. The unfortunate thing for many of the people that have started building, and the sites are, let's say, halfway through, 3/4 of the way through, they've got issues. As you said, they've got issues with the next builder that takes on the project is going to want to reevaluate the contract. And the other thing also is, let's not forget that the next builder is going to take on liabilities. Potential liabilities that are going to be pertinent to the site or the construction. So they don't know what they really want. Well, you got to ask yourself the question: unless you tear it all down, you're not going to really find out. You're not really going to see what happened or how it was built. Whether it was built properly, did they take corners? Did they take shortcuts? All these issues arise, and this is one of the biggest things when receivers. Liquidators try to, when they liquidate big building companies with high-rise developments, you got major issues there with the next builder wanting to take on that liability. Hence the reason why prices go up. Now, overall, though, as we said from the beginning of this year, that the prices were going to continue to rise in terms of construction. HIA, as we reported a few weeks back, came out with their report as well, and they said that but based on their view, their surveys and whatnot, being the industry group, they're also saying that things are going to continue to get more expensive. We've got the issue with engineered stone. We've got basics that's really going to affect the construction now, because that's the 7-star rating. Developments that have to be completed to a 7-star rating now. That's increased the cost of building by another anywhere between 12 and 17%. All these ongoing peripheral issues that all add up. And at the end of the day, it's going to be costing the consumer another 20, 30% more to build. One of my sisters, she's been trying to get her project started, and we had a long chat yesterday. And and I brought home some, just basically gave her some points and things to look at. She's wanting to start a building down in the South Coast. She has been trying to start it for the last 6 months. And she's got issues now. She's got issues because of because of basics, because of the new regulations. You might say that you've got she got her development approval a year ago, but it's not so much a development approval as is the way that it's going to be built, or the subcontractors new standards that they have to adhere to. That's going to add a lot more cost to her development. So it's all these crazy things that they haven't defined. The bodies haven't really defined what they want. The governing bodies haven't defined what they really want, to do. But at the end of the day, as I keep on saying, Martin, it was always all the roads lead to Sydney, meaning they lead to the central hubs. It was always going to play out this way. It's only coming to light now. But looking back at the stories that we've done over the years, and while we were looking at things, we were looking at as I say, the shifting sands, whether it was the demographic changes over the suburbs, the polarization of different communities, the non-infrastructure development by the then state governments. It was always leading to these more controllable central hubs, high-rise development, where basically we could be more controlled is the key. Because if the further, the broader the community spread out, the harder it is to police and to monitor to the state that they want to monitor and control us, as opposed to your overall general population growth. So it's you sort of have to wonder how far back was this etched in, agreed to by the government, by the then governments, and how long have we been manipulated into going back from? I remember from the early 70s when we came to Australia to the 80s and 90s. It was the dream to own a block of land, and back then in the 70s it was the good old quarter-acre block. Out west, and you build your dream home, and then we've done. It's almost like we've done a full circle. From having that dream of having a bit of land and a freestanding house to call your domain, to now being corralled back into with unfortunately a lot of young people, a lot of newcomers into the market won't have a choice but to buy into the high rise developments, because in a way that's all they're going to be able to afford, either to rent or to buy.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a bit of a mess, isn't it? And of course, the high migration is part of the issue. Just to remind everybody, we have significant net overseas migration, as you can see from this chart here, higher than it's been for a long time. All sorts of different mixtures, including, of course, a lot of students, but a lot of people. And as we'll discuss a bit later, Edwin, some of those migrants have the capacity to buy houses rather than apartments, and so there's a whole sort of set of issues there. Just one other point I'd like to bring up before we get into some of the questions. That we've got a bunch of really good questions which I want to spend time on, but I thought this was an interesting thing that came up. Albanese coy on taxing the family home. So the Financial Review is highlighting the fact that, well, he didn't say no, I might not. I'm definitely not going to tax it. And so One Nation is saying, is there more pain to come? Be interesting if that actually was another factor thrown into the mix in 2024, because of course that would significantly, to my mind, change some of the dynamics with regards to the way that property works. I don't know, it may be nothing, but on the other hand, you wonder whether there's a thought there, because of course they're desperate for more tax, aren't they? They're spending so much on submarines and other bits and pieces, and the tax take has risen to higher than it's ever been. So they're obviously looking for other levers.
Yeah, look, it's crazy, but I don't like I said, Martin. I guess from my conspiracy theory point of view, my conspiracy hat. I'd when we came to Australia, I thought the seeing a revolution. I actually saw some big demonstrations when I was in South America, living in South America as in my early years, as well as when I travelled back to South America. And saw some huge demonstrations and conflicts. And I'm sad to say, but after growing up here in Australia and now looking at where we are and what the governments are doing and what the federal, the state, and even local governments are doing, I mean, the people have just about had enough. And this is why my conspiracy theory brain cells keep on saying that expect to see a revolution, because the general populace can't keep on taking this. I mean, we've now got the 10 cities springing up in many capital cities, in parts of different capital cities, and like I said early this year as well. A lot of people think that the 10 cities were going to spring up out in the west, or they've got this illusion that it's going to happen in the southwest region or the western region and that. And I said, don't be surprised if a 10 city springs up in the North Shore, in the northern beaches, or any of these other places as well, because that's where the cost of living is a lot higher as well in the eastern suburbs. You'll have to look at your rental prices and the cost to live in these areas can be horrendous. Other than the fact of you got your schooling as well, your private schools. So all these things are going to be putting a lot of pressure on the general population. So it's really only going to be a matter of how long can the general population take all the bullshit that spews out of the government. The halls of government, whether it be federal or state. I don't think it's going to be, it's going to take that much longer. And like I said, things are almost broken, but unfortunately they have to break before they can be fixed. And my idea of breakage is going to be when you see mass demonstrations on the streets, not for a political cause as such, not for a stance on a religious belief, but rather for general living standards. Just the right to live and to live in peace and in harmony in a nation that was once considered to be one of the greatest nations in the world.
Yeah, it's just certainly sad to see some of the ramifications of bad policy over many years now coming home to roost. And of course, the politicians, as you often say, Edwin, either side of politics, they very much follow the same path, two wings on the same bird, et cetera, et cetera. Vultures, I think, probably is the right bird. And so what it basically says is it almost doesn't matter who's in power, the same logic still runs. Let's progress the conversation, because I put out a request for questions over the last few days, and I got quite a few. Now, what I've done is I've crystallized the questions into, I think, about 11 different subject matters. So we might spend a little bit of time on each and just use this as a way to sort of move the conversation forward and perhaps think a little bit about what has happened, but also what may happen over the next 12 months or so. And so here's the first question, which came actually from Jane. First time buyer here at auctions. So what are the key things I should think about before and at the auction? Which I thought was a really interesting question, Edwin, and over to you.
If it's your first time you're going to be attending an auction, I recommend that you go attend other auctions before the one that's going to be, that you're going to participate in, just to get the general gist, and look at the way that the selling agents handle themselves. Look at the way that the auctioneers handle themselves. It'll be even great to see, if you can go to attend an auction that's going to be held by the same agent on another home, a week or so prior to the one that you're going to be attending, because they'll generally use the same auctioneer as well. So you can get an idea of how your enemy is basically going to act or react on the day. That's one of the things I would say to people. The other one is, of course, don't rely on the reports that the vendor or that the real estate agent provides to you, and don't rely on what they say or what they're telling you. Do your own research, get your own building and pest reports. One of the things that we shared a couple of weeks ago with regards to one of the tips that we shared, Martin, was calling the selling agent's bluff, and wanting an offer before the day of the auction, in order, because they'll either use it to Dutch auction your offer, to see how keen, they'll want to see how keen you are, and if that you do provide an offer in writing or officially that you're prepared to move on, they'll Dutch auction that to others. So it's an auction before the auctions type of scenario. So to call the bluff is just to delay the reports and make it when I say delay your reports, delay your due diligence, and get access, get your building and pest inspector to get access just before, the week before, the days before the actual auction. So you're pausing them. You're showing the auctioneer that you're keen and interested in the property, without somebody else coming in strong. And they'll hold back. So it's basically a strategy. One of the many ways that you can call the bluff. There's a lot of things that we could say and share, but obviously it's all relative to how the campaign has progressed from when the agent bought the listing on market. I make it a point that in properties that we're keen, I make it a point to go there early. And to the open for inspections. I like to do private inspections outside of the open for inspections, but I still attend the open for inspections from time to time. Particularly either at the beginning of the campaign or more closer to the day of the auction, and to see what level of interest and who's interested in the property as well. Is it builders or syndicates that I'm familiar with, that Dusty and Evan are familiar with? When I say Dusty and Evan, the WeChat chatterers in areas where it's high demand by the WeChat chatterers. There's a lot of syndicates that float around in those areas. I want to know who I'm going to be going toe to toe with on the day. There's a lot of things that you can do, but I would say that they're the things, the few things that come to mind to give Jane, for her to grow hold. But there's a lot more things that you can do, but obviously because of time and the nature of the show, we got to give time for the other questions as well.
Yeah, I'll just add one other thing, Edwin, and that is that you need to go in with a fixed view as to how much you can afford, right? Because remember that this is a bit of a game. It's also very emotional, and so you can quite easily get carried away, and in the motion, the emotion can actually mean you start bidding more than you really need. So I always want people to go in with a very firm view as to how much they can afford and what makes sense. And remember that at an auction, you may well not be successful. So there may well be other bidders. You don't quite know what's gone on. The bid sometimes is with the vendor, and it's not always transparent and clear precisely whether the property is on the market or not. So always make sure that you know whether the property is really on the market or not, right? And that's the other thing. But I think, Edwin, your first point, sit in other auctions, just watch other auctions, get familiar with the process, get familiar with the way that it works. Don't turn up at your first auction ever intending to buy without actually having done your homework. And I think that's the pretty important thought there. Let's go on to the next question, because this actually is another one that came up actually from several people. This is actually from Bill, who said, I see more service charges are being imposed by owners' corporations. Is there anything I, as an owner, can do to resist those increases? And what happens if the owner's corporation goes bankrupt? Which I think actually is a pretty interesting question given the current situation, Edwin.
Yeah, look, it's very difficult for an owner's corporation to go bankrupt. There's a lot of things that need to go wrong before it can really go bankrupt. This is the reason why there's always they raise the special levies. That's what you got to be careful of is the special levies that are raised along the way, or when you're going to be buying into an apartment complex or a strata plane, more to the point, the high-rise developments where they're cankered with a lot of issues. You've got to be watchful and take stock before you buy. What you would consider to be future issues down the track, and get an idea as to how much those issues would cost. And this is what a lot of people fail in when they buy into high-rise developments, is that they fail to get building and pest reports. They fail to get independent reports because they're relying on the agents. Words to say to the effect, oh look, you don't need a building in pest inspection, it's a waste of money because the owner's corporation or the strata takes care of it and there's a strata report. That's bullshit. You do need one from an experience, and get something from an experienced, somebody that's more experienced, not your IT building and pest inspectors that have just come into the industry, but somebody that's seasoned, somebody that understands high-rise developments, has a bit of an eye for detail when it comes to looking into strata developments, because you've more or less got to look at. More to the point, you've got to look at your common areas, right? Because that's where the issues arise. The main issues arise: your basement car parking areas, your outer walls, your common walls, your common areas, your lift wells, all this. And this is why you need a seasoned person that understands how these things are put together, to have an idea and a better idea. To give you a better guide as to what your ongoing costs are going to be down the future. Yeah, it's all divided across the lots, but you would find that when you're having to fork out an extra $5, $10, $20, $40,000 extra in a given year on top of your strata levies because of a special levy that needed to be raised in order to take care of a major issue. Well, that's a lot of money, and that money is after tax. So they're the things that I would say really look into. The other thing that I say to many of our clients, I've said to many of our clients in the past, and that is you need to get involved with the owners corporation yourself. You need to sit on that committee. If you're buying into a strata complex and you're not sitting in a committee, you're an idiot. Sorry to say that. It's a foolish thing to do. You're handing over. You're giving somebody full reins of what they can do, what they can say, and how much they can spend on your behalf. You really need to be. You need to take an effective and be a strong voice in the committee, and be a part of that whole body. Obviously, not everybody can be a part of the committee, but you need to have a voice and you need to know and be across it at all times. The issues that will arise ongoing are going to be your lift wells, common areas, your balustrades, defective cladding and all that sort. They're the things that developers that use cheap windows, cheap frames for windows, across the units. So all these things you need to really have a stock, take control of. Now, one of the ways to reduce the cost if you bought into complex. And one of the many ways to reduce cost, to assist the rest of the owners to reduce cost, is by obviously you being involved in the owners corporation and challenge what the strata managers want to do. When I say challenge what they want to do, challenge the tradesperson that they want to use. They will have their go-to tradesperson to do certain jobs, and guess what? Their go-to person will give them a kickback. And that's how they make money. And now one of the things that I'm absolutely bewildered, and it's really in your face, is and they don't hide it. Strata companies don't hide it, and that is the insurances. They don't necessarily go with the better insurance. They go with the insurance that's going to give them the biggest kickback. Some of the kickbacks from insurance companies to owners to strata managers are upwards of 20%. Which is incredible. We're talking about building insurances that are $40,000-$60,000 per annum. And they're copping a 20% kickback. And then when you look at the insurance policy in detail, it does half or covers half of what it's really meant to cover. It's got more things that they don't cover than what they will cover. It's absolutely. You could say it's laughable on one side, and it's a travesty on the other side. But these are the reasons why you need to get a hold of. You need to be involved in the owners corporation. There's no point in saying, "I'll just turn up every now and again." And this is by way of if you're an owner occupier, it's going to hurt you a lot more if you don't become involved in the committee, if you don't participate in the AGMs and so forth. Likewise, if you're an investor. So to go in a little bit more detail with regards to, could an owners corporation go into I reckon a lot of them are trading what I consider to be trading insolvent, because they don't have enough funds in the kitty to run the corporation. But what the Stratas companies have done is they've got very, very strong liaisons with legal entities, and again, this is for legal entities that get appointed by strata managers. It's a license to print money for them, because it's an open checkbook almost. So that's another way to reduce the cost, is by again challenging what the strata manager, who the legal representative they want to use, unless you're fully satisfied with them, and making sure that a lot of these kickbacks are disclosed. Because look, one of the ways that it's easier for a strata manager to appoint a legal to chase somebody that's in arrears than it is for them to chase them, and it's going to cost you a hell of a lot more. And what are you paying the strata companies a management fee for if they're not going to be doing the hard work, nor do they chase builders and developers in the tenure that they're meant to chase. So these are all the things that play into buying into these high-rise developments, Martin. And it's really a prickly pear from day one. And unless you do your research on the builder, previous developments, go and inspect those, knock on doors of previous developments that they've built, and ask the residents of those developments, how they feel about the whole complex. They're going to give you a bigger and better story than what the agents will ever give you.
Yeah, well, then I think just two things to add there. The first is when you're looking at a unit, look also in the common areas and try and get a sense of how well maintained the common areas are. And the other, just to illustrate the problem, Mascot Towers, now that's 180 something people out of those properties for 4 years, but the service charges was around $2,000 a quarter. It's now more than $8,000 a quarter and rising, and they still haven't solved the problem. So these can be big big numbers, which means that if you are actually thinking of purchasing something in a high-rise building, you need to account for the likelihood that those service charges will rise. And as you say, you can get involved with the owners' corporation, but it's a one-way move. Prices will rise, and that's an interesting comparison between that and owning your own property, where of course you've still got to maintain it, but you're in more control. So, and frankly, the number of times that I've spoken with people who are in financial pressure because of the service charges going up relentlessly, and they feel completely helpless, is certainly rising.
Just going back to your comment with regard to Mascot Towers, right? I'm on record many years of saying that when the issues were starting to be publicised, over the mainstream, when it was sinking, and the issues arose, I'm on record as saying that they need to chase. Back then, they needed to chase the original strata management company that took charge of looking after the complex from the developer. And I said, that's where your dangerous liaisons are. And subsequently, years before that, Mascot Towers, the issue with Mascot Towers, I did an issue with Jennifer Duprel. Back then, she was with Property Observer, and we called it the dangerous liaisons with developers and strata managers. Look, strata managers are not going to go and make. Let me rephrase that. Not all strata managers will act this way, but a lot of strata managers won't go and take the builder developer to task, and they won't put in the relevant reports within the statutory tenure, which they have to in order to basically keep the builder on hook for any ongoing issues. So there is a period that they get given that special reports have to be put in. But as the old saying goes, Martin, you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you. And when you're talking about a strata complex or a high-rise development with, let's say, 120 apartment blocks, that's worth a hell of a lot of money. As residual income and ongoing income, and also as a saleable asset to another, from one strata company to another strata company. When you have that, it's a rent roll that you can basically borrow against as well from the bank. The bank will lend you on your strata roll. So this is an asset. So they're not going to go against the builder, and they're not going to go against the developer. Hence the reason why I said back then with the issue with Mascot Towers, I said you really need to go back to the original strata manager that took carriage of the owners corporation, or they took charge of looking after that complex, and lo and behold, he was appointed by the developer, and lo and behold, when major issues were identified in that window, where they could make a claim against the builder, and they had the opportunity to make against the builder / developer. Guess what they did? They cut a deal. I think it was for about $800,000, and the builder walked away. This is one of the reasons why they couldn't chase the builder. They had no recourse, and the poor bastards that are stuck now with nowhere to live, and no home, no roof over their head. Also try to see if they had an issue with the council and all this, because it was the council certified the development, this and that and the other, and they had just it all stopped. But these are the reasons why you need to be involved, and you need to be very active and proactive in that body. Otherwise, you're basically handing over your wallet to the strata company.
Spot on. And I always say to people, make sure you do your due diligence on the strata company and the surrounding finances. I just want to pick up. There was a comment stream in the chat which I just wanted to pick up. It relates to asbestos, and we had Alison coming in and saying there was no asbestos in newish homes, at least. Okay, we spelled asbestos wrong, but that's not a problem, Alison. Don't worry about that. And Drew replied, well, some of the plaster still coming from China contains asbestos, which it does. They only test a very small proportion of the material coming into the country. Asbestos isn't illegal in China, so maybe no surprise, particularly, of course, in drywall. And then on the other side, there was a comment saying asbestos is a really good material, just don't cut it. And then Hammers said asbestos is in toys as well. Now, that I made a show 2 days ago because my wife Jill died 2 years ago on the 23rd of December 21 from being exposed to asbestos. She had mesothelioma and died from it very painfully. The problem there is that asbestos fragments, and it's in places that you wouldn't expect. So if you're interested in getting the truth behind asbestos, have a look at that show from 2 days ago. The truth of the matter is there's no such thing as safe asbestos. The fibers can escape over time, and the problem is the exposure is one time is sufficient, but it takes a long time for it to actually develop into disease, maybe 20, maybe 40 years. This is a horrendous story. And if you want the full story, if you look at Asbestos Awareness Australia, which is the charity I formed with Jill before she died, and I continue to run in her memory. But asbestos is a killer. And I don't think there's such thing as safe asbestos. So whatever you're doing DIY, think asbestos. And the other point there quickly is that we've got three waves. The first wave was those mining the fibers out of the ground initially. Then you had the second wave, which was the building and construction phase, as it were, those involved in the building and construction. But the third phase, and this is the most pernicious, is actually the DIY phase, where people are actually doing stuff in their homes and are exposing themselves to asbestos fibers unknowingly. There's more than 20 forms of asbestos in a typical older home. And that's how Jill got it. And so she unfortunately died. So Edwin, I don't know whether you want to add anything, but to my mind, being asbestos aware is a critical issue.
100%. And this is where a lot of people don't realize that, or they start drilling into, they buy a house and then they start putting, paintings or photographs up on the walls, on the fibro walls, in areas, in homes where there's still asbestos sheeting. They don't realise what they're doing. Now, one of the things, apart from the many points, the many areas that you covered there, Martin, one of the things that our viewers probably don't know is that asbestos is also is found in jade. So there's a lot of ladies walking around with cheap jade around their necks, and the acid that our bodies produce breaks the jade down, and then obviously they're smelling, they're breathing in the fibers. It's interesting, and as the viewer brought out, it's imported. I was speaking about it in 2013. How a lot of the building material coming in from China back then was riddled with all sorts of, laced and riddled with all sorts of dangerous chemicals. Not only back then, I was talking about the 3 to 5% asbestos, which was the tolerance level allowable in China, but there is no tolerance level allowable here in Australia, obviously. And back then, I was talking about and writing about the need to make sure that if you're getting anything built or going into DIY projects, you needed to use Australian-made materials. I was very critical of all the renovation shows, as you said, back then, and I was challenging them and questioning them online and on radio, because I used to do speak a lot on 2GB and 2UE, and I used to challenge a lot of what they were doing and not doing. And if you look at the old episodes of these DIY shows, Martin, you see them demolishing the old bathrooms,
Yes.
and they've got no PPE. That was horrendous, and nobody called them up on it. Nobody, other than myself and a couple of others that, and I know where I'd find those. It would be in one of my very, very old Twitter posts when I first joined. But apart from that, I was also doing a lot of commentary when I was on Facebook and on other platforms, speaking about that issue. As I said, I did a lot of talking about it on radio. So it was. It was in your face. It was always in your face. There was no PPE, and I want to think. I said it back then. I think it was about 10, 12 years ago. I said, the day will come where, with Channel 9, Channel 10, or Channel 7, wherever the shows were, they will be taken to court over people developing lung or respiratory health issues and fatal illnesses. And they will be chasing them for a lot of money. It will make news headlines.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I've been lobbying very hard through political channels to try and get the story of asbestos better understood. The community don't understand 1/3 of homes have asbestos in it, and some newish homes, unfortunately, still have asbestos in it. But of course, politicians don't want to know. And what it means is that those who actually are exposed through DIY have no recourse at all, whereas those perhaps who are working in the trade might have recourse. So it's a big issue. So if you want to know more about asbestos and the risks, Asbestos Awareness Australia is the website, contains all of Jill's research on asbestos over a number of years, and we continue to maintain that site. And in fact, we have quite a few conversations with people privately about testing for asbestos and making sure that they know whether there isn't or is some asbestos there. And by the way, just to finish off that asbestos comment, unfortunately, quite a few rental properties are riddled with asbestos, and yet tenants have no protection because landlords have no obligation to test for asbestos, nor indeed advise tenants that asbestos exists, which I think is a crime.
Look, it is, and it's also a crime and a travesty to have your corrugated, fibro roof sheets, which are generally asbestos from the 50s and 60s, on the old garages, and they're exposed to the weather, and those fibres are floating around, and then you look at the demolition that goes on with a lot of homes, the demolition work that goes on. It's they just bulldozers just walk into the block of land, and half the time, or you hardly ever see the offsiders hosing down the site as the bulldozers tearing down the old structure, and then all that shit just flies out in the air. So really, we talk about it, we talk about it a lot, or the powers to be talk about it a lot, but there's not a lot being done. I have seen old warehouses that have been bought, for residential high-rise development, that sit next to kindergarten sites in Mascot and around those areas, and that the roof sheeting is the old asbestos fibre riddled fibrous cement there, and guess what? They just knock them down. Three bulldozers come in, knock the whole thing down during the day, whilst the little ones are playing in the kindergarten next door, and all you've got is some dingbat with a small garden hose trying to hose the dust down as they move along. Crazy. It's absolutely crazy, Martin.
No, it is, Edwin. And I'll tell you, just before I left Australia, there was some renovation work being done just down the road, and they got the specialists, quote unquote, to come in and remove the asbestos. And so there were 3 of them there. 2 of them, because it was a really hot day, had all the PPE, etc., except that they took the hood off, stripped back to their waist while they were shipping the asbestos into the various bags and things. And I went up to them and said, "Do you realise that's actually the problem?" And they sort of turned around and said, "Well, it's so hot, we don't care." And I'm thinking, that's the problem, right? We don't care. The truth is that you need to care. And unfortunately, the legacy here is more than 4,000 deaths a year from asbestos-related exposure, including mesothelioma and asbestosis, 800 or so from mesothelioma every year, even now. And the numbers are not going down. So this is not yesterday's problem. It's still, unfortunately, a very contemporaneous problem. And so if you're doing DIY, if you're thinking about a property, check for asbestos. It's really, really important. And, I know from first-hand experience how bad Jill's life was over the last few years and how her breathing got worse and worse until she died because she couldn't breathe. Anyway, let's move the conversation forward. Another question here, which actually sort of segues quite now. This is defects. So it seems the defects in new builds are on the rise. Why is this? As a prospective buyer, what should I do to check out the builder? And is there any recourse after purchase? What do you think, Edwin?
In terms of recourse, look, there's very little recourse, direct recourse with a builder development company. You really have to. It's really pursued through the owner's corporation, the strata company. The recourse that I always say that you stand a better chance of getting anything from is by pursuing the selling agent or the marketing company that made certain assertions and made certain promises with regards to the unit in the unit complex, and so that's your better recourse. Obviously, by documenting what they said, by taking contemporaneous notes in your conversations with the agents, diarising everything, taking all the paraphernalia and putting it all together. That is your better recourse once you buy in. In terms of defects, I mean, Martin, you and I have been talking about this. Is the more pressure there is to build in way of making a profit at the end because of the rising costs, the more corners you're going to cut. Look, my son is an engineer, and he's in his previous post. He's worked as an estimator and for a residential development company, mid-tier development company, and they did a project in Top Ryde. I won't disclose the full address, but they did a project in Top Ryde, and as they were excavating to for the basements, obviously there's an adjoining building that had only just been completed 12 months prior, and as they were excavating, he gave me a call and he said, Dad, I got something for you. But you're not allowed to take photos. You're not allowed. So what are you giving it to me for? If I can't go there and take photos. No, it's just for your for your general information. I said, okay, what's wrong? He goes, the piles or the concrete posts, let's say, right, so that our viewers can understand, the concrete posts, the piles that are placed around the perimeter or the boundary of the adjoining blocks, blocks of land, to just basically stop the thing from caving in. Some were 1.2 to 1.5 meters short of where they should have sat. And I said, hell, what's your building company going to do? I said, well, there's nothing much we can do. we got to continue with our project. They couldn't make a big song and dance about it, because the more the bigger the song and dance they made about it. And this is the thing, Martin. This is the moral dilemma with costs and governance and what government should really be doing is, the more or less, in a nutshell, the more or less that building company more or less had to turn a blind eye, keep on doing what they thought would be best practice, to finish their project. But guess what? At the end of the day, there's an adjoining residential block of units next to the ones that they completed that the footings or are short. So sooner than later, they're going to give way. So this is what happens with when the cost of construction goes up. You get corners are cut. You've got there's a lot of second tier, third tier developers, builders don't know how to build high rise. There's a handful of first tier builders that know how to build, and those first tier developers, the majority will avoid building in areas where we're building multiple basements, below the water table. Parramatta is a classic example. Parramatta is a classic example of that. If you look at the old units, if you look at the old block of units around Parramatta, the CBD, and heading towards Phillip Street, Charles Street, Phillip Street, you look at the old the building next to the New South Wales Police Headquarters on Hassel Street, the corner of Hassel and Charles, and further down Phillip Street, and that the old on George Street. There, the old CBA building. You look at how deep they were built. They only go down, at worst, they go down one basement, but the car parking levels take up the first and second level. If you look at those buildings very, very closely, and if you look at the older buildings in other areas as well, you've got a similar landscape or a similar buildscape where you've got the majority of the basements, the car parking area to accommodate the residents in those the occupants are above ground. But so we've been building where we shouldn't be building, and we've been building and digging deeper than what we should have ever been digging in and around these basins. Most of Sydney is in the basin. It sits on a water table, and Homebush, Homebush Bay area. You've got your Olympic Park area. All these areas. Hence the reason why you got all these issues. That we build on toxic, on contaminated lands. Back in the day, when I was a teenager, we used to ride around Homebush Bay. We used to ride our bikes around Homebush Bay in those areas, and that's where the old abattoirs were, and that's where the paint companies were, and there's so much toxins in that land area. I mean, I've told stories and I've heard stories from the people that build in there, and I've seen contracts of sale of land that 1 year they had, the contracts were about 300 pages thick, because the contamination report behind the contract was 250 pages, and the rest was in relation to the land, and within a number of years, the sale of land contract was 50 pages, and you ask yourself the question, what happened to the other 250 pages of the report? We don't know. There's nothing to see here. All of a sudden, councils or councillors or or the developers and those involved, these contamination reports disappear. So these are all but you only have to look at historical references in historical reports in and around the original, one of the original reports that was mandated by the New South Wales government. I think it was Bob Carr at the time, with regard in relation to the development around the Olympic Park. In the original report, it very specifically says that the accommodation in that area, or the residential accommodation that was to be built to accommodate the athletes, were only going to be for that purpose only, and after that they were supposed to be demolished. Lo and behold, we've been living there ever since and building high-rise. I mean, there's so much shit there. I mean, it looks pretty. The landscape looks pretty. You got all these pyramids there, but people don't know what got buried there underneath all that land and 20-inch slabs of concrete that are that's it's frightening to know what's under there. It's crazy, but that's one of the reasons why. And the materials have gotten cheaper. When I say cheaper, they've been cheaply made, but they're just as expensive. Our construction, the boom that we went through from the 2013 onwards, or 2013 onwards, when the Foreign Investment Review Board lifted the basically opened the floodgates for every man and his dog from overseas to earn buying property in Australia because of the fixation and the what would you call it? And because our governments became addicted to the stamp duty. And we just about sold everything that was being built, and everybody went higher in order to get more. And so the grift goes back then, and the materials were we were testing a lot of materials. Hence the reason why we've got issues with waterproofing. We've got issues with products that have got other substances that bring ill health to the residents. We got mold issues. We became guinea pigs in a way, Martin. And for all those years, why? Because of this fixation by this addiction by the state governments and the federal government to sell property to overseas investors, and obviously that brought in the stamp duty and other levies.
Absolutely, Edwin. And let me just mention that there's a very interesting report that people should read. It's from the New South Wales Parliamentary Research Service, and it's called New South Wales Planning Reforms, Building Regulation and Certification. It's a briefing paper from September 2023. And in there, they actually call out more than 20 significant problems in the whole planning, regulation, certification process. It's a minefield, but it's really an interesting report. I read it the other day. And one of the interesting observations, Edwin, about that report is that it actually highlights a whole bunch of issues that none of the so-called changes that have been brought in New South Wales are tackling. So they sort of nibbled around the edge and done a few things, but they're nowhere near fixing the problem. And what I thought was interesting is this isn't actually, a third party. This is actually New South Wales itself saying we have a problem with our planning, processing, certification, regulation processes. And they were making some very strong recommendations in that report about what should change. So even now, my point is, even now, this is not fixed, So everyone's saying, well, of course, we fixed the problem, certifications now, fine. No, it's not. We know it's not. We're continuing to see really, really bad, poor quality construction underway. We're seeing extra stories being lobbied for by the building contractors and particularly the big players. We've got the move towards high-rise development closer into the city, all of that stuff because of dealing with a higher density issue and all of that sort of stuff. but the regulatory systems and processes are bust. And by the way, this is New South Wales, but I'm pretty confident in saying you can see precisely the same issues in most other states as well.
Look, 100%, Martin. And now there are some groups which are that screenshot that I sent you before the rant with what they're saying. It's okay now. We can move in. Houston, the problem's been fixed. It's safe now to buy into high-rise developments, which is a lot of bullshit because it's, as you said, that report was dated back 2013. My advice to you, Martin, is to print that out and frame it, because sooner than later that report's going to disappear.
Yeah.
And I would say that it's going to be sooner than later. Why? Because the state and the federal government need the construction to kickstart. Building granny flats and secondary accommodation in dwellings isn't going to suffice, because not everybody has that appetite for that, Martin. So that's it. Print it out in colour. Put it in a nice frame and hang it up on your wall. Because pretty soon we're going to be asking the question as to where the hell that went. It's going to be taken offline.
Spot on. Absolutely, I agree with you, and it's a very important topic, and one I'm sure we'll come back to in 2024. Okay, next topic quickly. We're running out of time, but let me just see if we can get through a couple more. Underquoting. Several people said, can you please explain what this is, how it works, and what the implications are?
Well, in a nutshell, right, underquoting is, I'll try to be very, very, very quick. So in a nutshell, is an agent gives a vendor a market opinion of the value of a property. That's called the CMA, comparative market analysis. That's called the CMA. So basically, I go in, Martin, and I'll say, look, your home is worth, your property is worth 1 to 1.1 million, right? And based on my estimation of the value of your property at the time, and I provide examples of other sales of similar properties like yours, similar size block of land, inclusions, fixtures and fittings. If you've done any renovation work to it, basically, I'm trying to compare apples with apples, right? So we agree that your property is worth between 1 and 1.1 million. You agree to that price. Obviously, your expectations are going to be closer to the 1.1 as to the 1 million. But most agents have got a leeway. There's a tolerance of 10%, right? You could be a little bit closer, but just for the sake of this, the conversation. So, we agree to that. Now, I put in my selling agency agreement that you sign to give me carriage of the sale of your property. I put there my opinion being $1 million to $1,100,000. So, however, where there is a breach of the legislation and in relation to underquoting, is if I then put on the portals, or I advertise in writing, whether it be on the portals, marketing campaigns, by email, or even verbally, I tell prospective buyers that the guide is 950 to $1 million, right? So I have that's the underquoting part. That is where I am now in breach of the regulations, and I am breaching of the act. So I have given to try and attract more people to the property, to give them the illusion that you don't know what your property is worth as a vendor, to give them that illusion or that impression that you're desperate, or that the strategy is to create more eyes, more eyeballs coming into view the property, and have more people attend even the auction. is I price the any form of advertising. As I said, it could be by word, could be text, email, on the portals or any other marketing format. I advertise a lower price than what is on my selling agency agreement that you have signed. Now, the way agents get away with going ahead is basically, and this is where the where a lot of vendors go along with this bullshit, and that is the fact that the agents come up and they're upfront with the vendors, Martin. They say, "Oh, look, within a few days, they say, oh, we haven't had much interest in the property. Maybe we're advertising it too high. Can you give us permission to advertise it below the CMA that we gave you and below what we put your property's worth on in the range that your property's worth that we put in the selling agency agreement. Otherwise, we're not going to get people coming to inspect the home," which is a lot of nonsense. It has been a lot of nonsense, and you've seen how 2023 has played out. More to the point around freestanding homes, there's really not been a need to do that, to underquote or present mislead the general public by providing a lower than your estimated guide that was presented to the owner when you first signed the agency agreement. There was no need to, because of the high demand. But why do they do it? They do it because they want the rest of the community or the neighbours to see how many people are coming to the open house inspections, how many people turn up to the day of the auction, and then they can beat their chest at the end saying that Tom Panel saying what a great auction they had, and they sold for 20%, 15%, or 200, 300,000 above the reserve, which was never the true indication in the first place. So I hope that explains, in a nutshell, what underquoting is, or helps them to understand what we're not meant to be doing. But that's what it is, and that's how agents get around it, and they get around it because vendors are a party to the whole charade.
Right, and just to be clear, it's not a legal practice, is it?
No, it's not a legal practice.
No.
It's illegal, and the fines. The fines are 200 points. Which each point and you could be, your license can be cancelled depending on the breach and how many times you breached it. And each point at the moment, I think it's $100 per point. So it's meant to be, that's the maximum. But they only get a slap in the wrist, across the wrist, and they get told not to do it again. So far, nobody, only Victoria, Fair Trade in Victoria, took the agents to task recently, or over 2023, and I think there was $1.5 million in fines dished out with respect to underquoting, which is impressive, and to kudos to the Victorian Fair Trading. They also had inspectors. Wait for it, Martin. Wait for it. They had inspectors attending auctions on the day. What have I been asking for the last 8-10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the only thing. You've got to see on the ground what's going on. All right, we'll just get one more question in, and then we'll look at the numbers. This is a good one, though, to finish the questions on. Seems granny flats are all the rage. What does it tend to do to the property or the plot that it's on and which is built on? Does it increase the value or reduce the appeal on resale? I thought it was quite an interesting question.
Look, it is. It's I guess it's beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? So if you're sitting on 10,000 square meters of land, and you want to build a second dwelling, you can call it a granny flat. Or you can call it, which one's going to get you more money if you call it a granny flat or if you call it servants' quarters. You sort of you sort of ask that question. Depends what you call it. Man, you're a little bit late to the party there. That was a good joke, but so yeah, the and I say that because if you build a granny flat in parts of Sydney, right? This is all very subjective. So this is very, very subjective to the individuals. But if you build, from my point of view, if you build a granny flat in some parts of Sydney, say the western suburbs of southwest region, I would say that it adds value to the property.
Right.
Right, because the actual dwelling, and as I said, yeah, you're generally building. You're adding value by adding the building space, and you're also got a lot of older homes. If you're building a granny flat to in areas, in your more affluent areas, you could come unstuck if you're not building it to the style or the the scape of the area. And if you build that second dwelling, there's one that I forgot to send you, but there was one property that I'll post when you put this live stream on Twitter. I'll post it. I'll post the floor plan of this particular dwelling. Now it's a $4 million property. And it's in the Ryde region. That's all I will say about it. Now it's a new dwelling, and it's got a granny flat attached to the dwelling, but it makes the floor plan look horrendous, and it actually takes away from the aesthetics of the house as well. So the house looks okay from the front, but because the way that they've divided, the way they've added the second dwelling, they've also really created a third dwelling as well, which I don't think it's council approved. But when the viewers see the floor plan, they'll get what I mean. So there's areas where it will add value, and I believe there are certain parts where it will detract because they will use the wrong materials to build. It won't be in character with the surrounding or the scape, as much as I say that it adds value to dwellings in the western and southwest region, there are some shitty granny flats that have been built in the southwest and western region as well that you sort of wonder who built them and how they were built. So obviously it's going to be more of a deterrent. So yeah, it's a case by case, but look, overall that's where we're headed, by hook or by crook. That's where we're headed. Victoria well and truly into it now, and it's either live in a granny flat, live in a caravan, or live in a tent.
Absolutely. And I think, yes, the it depends answer, I think, is spot on. There are some circumstances where it might make sense, others where it doesn't. But of course, there's a heavy pushing of granny flats, as you say, both from the state perspective and also from private developers who think it's a quick buck. So what interesting to see. Well, as we come to the end of the show, Edwin, let's just touch on the numbers because, of course, in our normal round, we always do. And what we've done is to compare the numbers this year with last year. And let's just start with Sydney. So back in 2022, the properties listed for sale was at 14,458. So 25th of December 2023, we're at 12,658. So we're a long way down on where we were. And that doesn't bode well for next year in the Sydney region, does it, Edwin?
No, it doesn't. And in a lot of suburbs, there will be suburbs where you will get an increase in numbers in the first quarter in your western regions and in your southwestern regions. And the other thing that people have got to be careful with when a lot of people start talking about numbers is what type of numbers, what type of dwellings are they? Are they houses or are they apartments? And so look, we put it up there. And again, we use the domain because we've used domain region as a go-to site for a number of years, and to compare the regions across the eastern states, and it's just been a good site to give us clarity on the different types of properties, different areas. From our point of view, obviously we have not dissimilar results from our conversations with colleagues on the ground, the selling agents, people that I've known for many years, for a number of decades, what they tell us in the big offices, what's happening, and also from other websites that we also keep a track of the numbers as well. So if these numbers continue the way that they've been tracking, and let's not forget that it's 2023, there's been higher demand on the ground in terms of buyers wanting to buy than properties available, than the demand that was in 2022, and why people aren't talking about that other than you and I is beyond me. And this is and I've been saying to some of friends and clients and relatives over the last week, it's a watch this space, because the migrants that are coming in with a hell of a lot more money than what they were in previous years. And secondly, they don't just come in and go straight into a purchase. They'll come in, they'll wait around, whether it be 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, check out the different areas of Sydney before they settle down, and they've got the money to do it. And then they're not buying with government assistances or joint venture agreements or this or that. They're coming in with your 20, in some cases your 30% deposit plus stamp duty, in the bank. So I feel demand is going to be a lot higher in 24, and for the sake of the local buyers that want to get in the market, I do hope that the numbers rise. But it's a watch this space in the area that you want to look into. These are just general figures. Not every suburb is going to act the same.
Spot on, Edwin. And we might just quickly look at the trends. So this is Dusty's Sydney region listings. And you can see that going down. And another way of looking at it is this is the domain for sale listings in 2022 and 2023. And you can see that there's a consistent trend where, again, you can see that there's a considerable slide. So, as you say, watch this space. But I think your point is also very true, Edwin, that you have to go granular here, because not all properties are behaving the same way. Not areas are behaving the same way. Units and houses are behaving differently. And I also see quite a few people who are coming back, migrating to Australia with large pools of cash available. They want to buy houses, not units. So I think that's another factor in the mix. We might just quickly look at the story in Melbourne as well, because Melbourne's quite interesting. If you look back in 2022, we had 23,154 in Melbourne, which is worth thinking about. And if I skip forward then to Melbourne in this calendar year, you can see that it's got 23,483. So something different is happening in the Melbourne end of things.
Yeah, it's on the money, but we knew that the investors, it's only now I'm hearing more and more mainstream media news talking about investors getting out of Melbourne. And if you look at those numbers, the majority of those numbers are freestanding homes.
Yeah.
and people are asking us the questions, oh, why is it freestanding homes? Because there were a lot of investors that went into Melbourne from other parts of Australia and abroad with fixated on buying home loan packages as investments, and the reason why they're bailing out is because a lot of the Asian buyers in the communities that do your budget accommodation, they can't do that in those markets. They're in Melbourne. They're a lot tighter. They're a lot harder. And the legislation with regards to renting, you could say, is a lot tighter than what it is in New South Wales. So they can't get away with your budget accommodation type of scenarios where they're renting out rooms. You've got more your traditional property management side of things that are operating there, and most of the investors are in Sydney that bought into those home and land packages in Melbourne, and they can't control, even if they could rent them out on a room by room basis. They need to be close by in order to go and pick up the cash at the end of the week. If you go down to Melbourne on a monthly basis, you're going to get a lot of people that are going to be skimping out on paying their rent. So it's that, hence the reason why the WeChat Charters called it, and soon after, weeks after they called "Get Out of Melbourne," because of those silly proposals that the Victorian government were bringing in, and it will continue to bring in, taxing the investors. It's really a no-go zone for investors, so hence the reason why you've got a lot of these properties for sale on the fringes, on the outskirts of the Melbourne region, whereas apartments seem to be doing relatively okay in comparison. You've got half the number of apartments for sale in Melbourne than what you do in homes.
Absolutely. Very interesting. And the dynamic between Sydney and Melbourne is now quite stark. Brisbane, of course, back in 2022, we had 4774. And if we skip forward to this year, 2821. Huge drop. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, almost 50%. And from what I'm hearing this is on the different networks, from what I'm hearing there is the demand is still very high in that area. Again, not in every suburb. So it's really going to be a watch this space with the listings for 2024, Martin. It's not it's not looking pretty for people wanting to come in. But the thing is how much longer can those that have been sitting on the sideline, even the Aussies that have been sitting on the sideline that cashed out of crypto or any other investment class over 21 and 22, and been waiting for things to for the numbers to really ramp up in 23. How many of them are going to basically bite the bullet and jump in as well? That's why I'm saying it's really going to be be careful with what you wish for, what you buy, what you move into, and who you're going to be competing with on the ground. It's because of the lack of demand, construction's going to drop even more so in 24 than in 23 and previous the 22. That's what HIA is saying anyway. There's not going to be a delivery of that many. Most of them are high rise anyway. Freestanding homes, in terms of your numbers of projects being finished over 23 to apartments. I mean, it's the miles apart. There's more strata developments going to be completed, or strata units going to be completed, than a hell of a lot more than homes. And there's all these issues with small building companies that would otherwise take on the construction of buildings. Many LGAs have got still got issues with your NIMBYs and pushing for and also LGAs have changed a lot of the LEPs as well. So you can't even build duplexes, and you've got all these homes, freestanding homes that were built in the late 40s, 50s, 60s, and on decent blocks of land that could easily be subdivided into a duplex or a small villa complex of four, but they won't because of political persuasion. So it's not going to be easy navigating through the property arena for 2024. And one of my early predictions for 2024 is that the home prices, freestanding home prices, will continue to increase by 5 to 10% in 2024.
Yeah, units perhaps not so much, and we'll see. As with so many things, where interest rates going, where's migration going, et cetera. But this freestanding homes issue, I think, is a big one. Just want to acknowledge Nigel. Thank you very much for the super chat, Nigel. Appreciate that. Thank you indeed. And Edwin, just before we tidy up tonight and disappear, Drew was asking this question. I don't know whether you've got a thought on it, but the EV vehicles in an underground car park, we're getting more now EV vehicles. Of course, they have potential fire risks and are difficult to extinguish if there's a problem. So is this an issue that is a sleeper, and is that something that we should be thinking about in terms of building standards, regulations, et cetera, et cetera? What do you think?
Well, you've got a number of issues which we've discussed in the past, and that is the older apartment complexes that your 3-story walk-ups, your yellow brick and your red brick apartments that were built in the 60s, 70s, and late 50s, 60s, and 70s, where the amperage going into the unit complex is just not enough to cater for the EV unit. So a lot of these apartment complexes won't be able to cope. They can barely just cope right now with the transition from gas cooktops to these induction units that suck up a lot of amps. And back when these units were built, there was something like 30 to 32 amps allocated to every unit. Why? Because that's all they needed at the time. There was just a stove, one power point in each, in the 2 bedrooms and one in the lounge room, a light switch in each room, including the bathroom, and so that was sufficient. But now, when you've got your split system air conditioning units, so you've got all these added-on switches, and there's a huge overload on the main in the complex. So they have to upgrade the mains. In your high-rise developments, let's say your six level unit, anything above 4 levels that was being built from in your 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. So again, I feel that you're going to be the owners corporations are going to be up for a hell of a lot of money to upgrade the systems. Then you got to put the switches. Where do you put the charging stations in these complexes? Is it going to be in the common area? Is each unit going to get allocated what one would think that it would be allocated to each unit? So the infrastructure cost to accommodating the electric vehicles to charge these rechargeable batteries is going to be huge. That's anything that's not built is going to have to take that into consideration as well. So any new development. So again, it goes back to, is it going to be a charging station that the owners corporation is going to pay for? Is it going to be because anything that's not built by hook or by crook, they're going to have to accommodate for these, particularly as the state governments are walking into these 2030 thing, or 2050, whatever. So the cost of building, the cost of construction is going to increase. So yeah, And then you got your insurances, of course. You got your fears of your batteries blowing up. How many are going to, are they going to be vehicles that are going to have your Tesla batteries? Are they going to be your cheaper batteries? Are China going to give us cheaper batteries that we can put in other vehicles? I mean, to me, just the costs keep on increasing, Martin. And so by right, the insurance companies are going to say, hey, if you're going to be adding all this infrastructure and all these other potential issues that could go wrong in the future. Well, we're going to add our premiums. We're going to add our premiums as well, and that goes for your freestanding homes as well. It'll be interesting to see moving forward what happens with your rental properties, how the government's going to see that, and if they're going to have to be upgraded to accommodate electric vehicles as well. It's just a mess. It really is a mess, mate.
I think it is a mess, and the fire risks, we've had a few examples in the UK where effectively, for example, there was one at a local airport quite recently where an EV caught fire. It was in one of those multi-story car parks. The whole of the floor of the car park basically got incinerated. They had to close the airport, etc. But of course, it's very hard to extinguish. So I think there's a really, really significant issue here, which is not fully understood. As you say, it's also power demand, etc. So it's a mess, I'm afraid. Another thing to watch out for in 2024. I should explain, by the way, that the person at the door wasn't looking for me. They were looking for somebody else completely. I couldn't understand why they kept ringing this wretched doorbell, because I didn't answer it the first couple of times, but they were insistent. They wanted to see, so I apologize for that, but there you go. Edwin, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you very much for taking some of your Christmas evening out and hopefully spreading a little bit of insight and Christmas cheer around the place. Obviously, we'll be back next week for our normal rant. I will say that the other questions that we didn't get to will work into the next 2 or 3 weeks with rants, because there are some other really interesting questions to think about too. But any last thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, man. Just look, it's going to be an interesting 2024, no doubt. But as I said before, be prepared for 2024 and prepare yourself mentally, physically, emotionally. Take some time off, recover, make it a plan. Other than buying a property or renting one or buying an investment property, make it a plan to look after yourself first and foremost, because 2024 is going to, I think it's going to be a year that's going to demand a lot from us, as I say, mentally, physically, in a way, spiritually as well, because it's going to be hectic based on what's happening globally. So I wish all our viewers, all our followers, all the very best and the safe end of year and a prosperous 2024.
Absolutely, Edwin, and I heartily reiterate that. Thank you very much for spending some of your Christmas night with us. We really appreciate it. I hope you have a restful period over Christmas and New Year, and face into 2024 with all of the challenges and opportunities it might provide for you. We'll be back, of course, with our regular shows each week, ranting and raving about property and all the stupidity property. So Edwin and I will be back. And just to say that tomorrow we've got Tony Locantro on. Tony is going to also give us his Christmas cracker. So if you've got a time tomorrow, feel free to join us for Tony Locantro. And just to say that the doggies are still very much in situ. So there you go. That's them. Edwin, have a good Christmas and New Year yourself. Look forward to catching up next week. And thank you very much for spending some of your time with us this evening too. It's greatly appreciated. See you later.
Anytime, man. All the best.
And this is Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, signing off. Look forward to seeing you on the next show. Cheerio. Have a good Christmas.